Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co-host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran, military spouse, and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Enrique. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, everyone out there. I want to say I'm excited to share that we are honoring the United States Navy 247th birthday with Fleet Master Chief Marco Ramirez, all the way from San Antonio, Texas. So, Fleet Master Chief, tell us about you and your evolution in the Navy.
All right, man. Well, I did 32 years in the Navy and had a great ride. And being a young Hispanic man from San Antonio, I joined the Navy because my dad was in the Air Force, and I was born with an ID card in my pocket, and he was. I was born in Misawa, Japan. My mom was pregnant with me here in San Antonio. My dad took his first job from the Air Force in Misawa. And so she was able to fly with me pregnant, and I was born over there. My dad, I think, was kind of he worked in the intelligence. I called him like a little spook. I mean, he would, they called him Flash because he graduated last of his Morse code class. And what he would end up doing is they would see the submarines coming around, the Russian ones in the Japan, way up north in Japan. And my dad's job was to capture a bubble of communication. And once they captured it, they would bring it in and clear the distortion. And he would read the message and translate it from Russian back into English and send it by Morse code to wherever that went. And that was my birth into the armed forces. And so when I graduated from high school, I ended up thinking about what I want to do. I went for 2 years of community college. Friends around me just weren't doing those good things, and they started falling and doing some bad things. And I thought I had to get away. And so I joined the Navy, and I think that saved me. And I had a good ride. I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, and I liked it. And then I went to A school in a place called Lakehurst, New Jersey, where they would teach aviation, boats and mates and equipment. And that was for the catapults and arresting gear. So I went to work in this big old hangar in Lakehurst, New Jersey, and it was a place where they launched or they housed the Hindenburg blimp back in the old days. And inside that hangar, they had an aircraft carrier that had a working catapult. And so we got a chance to work with that. And I graduated at the top of my class, and I was able to select the orders that I wanted. And one of them was to Guam, but I passed that up and went to USS Enterprise. And I stayed there for 5 years. And I was there from an E1 to an E5. And I made E5 in like 2 years. But I think I was lucky to do that because I had some folks around me. What I found out as a young guy is I got married a year later to my high school sweetheart from San Antonio. And she came with me. And I found out that you had to, at the end of the workday, you had to clean the ship and make sure all the spaces were good before they let you go home, or else you couldn't. And some of the single guys, they didn't care, but I wanted to go home. So I'd clean up, and my supervisors always noticed that I was just, I did what it took. And one day out to sea, I was at E3. I had this steam watch, and I had to go and look at the catapults and all the working equipment and look at the gauges. And I noticed a leak in the very end of very bottom. And so I had to go wake up my supervisor, was the E5. And in those days, the work center supervisor was your mentor, and he taught you everything, or she, and you did what they said. And the first class, when they came around, the E6, if they would also mentor and counsel and teach you. But I never really saw the Navy chief, and so I found that steam watch, and I had to go into the berthing area for the E5 and E6. And I was kind of scared to go in there at night. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, but I woke him up. He came out, and the next day they let me sleep in. And then they called me to the division office, and they said, "How'd you find that leak? That's amazing." And from there, I made like sailor of the quarter. They started advocating for me, and I believed in ownership. I learned that your name has something, and they took care of me, and they really launched me in a pattern that set me above my peer group. And so I did 5 years on the Enterprise, and then I went to BAW 110 in Miramar, California, and above San Diego. It was the Navy Master Jet Base, who's now moved to Lemoore. But during that time, I worked there at a squadron. And I was at E5, and I learned a lot from that squadron because I was the work center supervisor, flight line coordinator, and they had this airplane wash going on. And I was supposed to be out there supervising it, and I thought I could take a step back and sign off some personal qualification standards for the sailors there, and budget my time better that way. What ended up happening was I had a sailor, a young female sailor, who wasn't wearing her personal protective equipment, and she got some aircraft soap in her eye. They came and told me, and I went over there to try to help wash out her eye, but ended up having to take her to the doctor. And the doc she had contact lenses on, and that aircraft soap was so strong that I think it melted it to her lens, and they had to off, but they did it and she was okay. Then about 2 months after that, we were having command quarters in the auditorium there at the base, and we filled up the whole auditorium with our whole command. And the commanding officer called me up there, and he asked me to talk to them about, and I didn't know this was coming, about what happened in the interest of safety. And so I had to get up there in front of the command, and I talked about me being the work center supervisor and how I failed my sailor and not supervise that job and what ended up happening and the lesson I learned. But that made a difference to me about just, you need to do your job. And I never wanted to repeat that again, to get up there in front of the whole command and have to talk about what had happened. But it was a little embarrassing for me, but I gained a lot of respect too from my peer group and my command. And during that time, the rating I was in was overmanned. So they were letting people out of the Navy or letting them change into a different rating. And they had this it was before the computers and memorandums and stuff. And they had this, couldn't send messages. They had this Link magazine that had all the detailers in it. And there was an article in there that said, hey, if you could type, we need you. You want to be a legal man? And I had said, yeah, I could type. And so I put in a package for it, and I was able to go to Navy Justice School. And that was an interesting rating, because all the folks that bid for that rating were great sailors. They were the cream of the crop, and they only took a couple of them. But I went there, and like my father, I graduated at the bottom of my class. As a matter of fact, I think I was the last one. And they sent me to this place called Harold D. Holt in Western Australia, and we worked with the Royal Australian Navy. And there was some Air Force guys that were out there as well, about 40 of them, and they studied the sun. It was the area by the equator, by the Tropic of Capricorn, that allowed you to see the sun. And it was very hot out over there, but it was a good tour. I took my family, I had a good time, and made first class, and they sent me to the USS Carl Vinson. When I went to the USS Carl Vinson, I remember going into that legal office, and it was a different beast. Everything was working and moving, and my LPO went and got my service record and was screening it right in front of me and looking at it and asked me a couple of questions. And then he told me, hey, you're going to handle administrative separations for the ship. Here's your work pile. And there were all these service records. Had to been about 50 service records in 3 piles. And I went out to the passageway, and I thought for a second, I don't know if I could do this job. I was overwhelmed, but I just took it a step at a time. And I called Washington, the Bureau of Navy personnel, and they helped me with each and every one of those cases, and I was able to clean them. And after a year time, my CO called me up, and he dubbed me the Terminator, because I had administratively separated about 10% of our command on board the USS Enterprise. It was interesting. And I would go up at nighttime and get my qualifications with the catapults, and I would do that. So that was just very good. But what I learned about that place is the First Class Petty Officers Association. They banded together. They made a nice area for them to eat. You could go rest, and they paid good money to have good stuff to eat. And they did good things for all the sailors and all the command and the community. And I thought that was very interesting for me. And I learned from it. And I learned what you could do with the movement of bodies and put them together. You were unstoppable. And the next command I went to was in Bremerton, Washington. It was a Navy Legal Service Office. So here I was, a third command legalman, and I had dodged all these Navy Legal Service Office. I was always working independent out in the field. So here I am, and I go with 12 other E6. They were all hard charging. I was new to the command and understand I had to go ahead and make a name for myself. So they put me in this defense department where they start everybody, I guess. But I kind of really liked it. I liked to advocate for the sailor. You worked with court marshals, you worked with assistants for legal assistance with wills and powers of attorney. And we were just helping folks, and I really enjoyed it. And I was the command LPO on the ship before I came. And so we got our first evaluations. And in that time, they would give you an evaluation of a 4.0, 3.0, 2.0, 1.0. But most of the folks got 4.0. And the way that they would segregate it or break you out is if you had 12 E6s and they're doing evaluations on all the E6, the first class, they would rank the top 50%. So the 6 and above would get ranked, 6 and below wouldn't get ranked. And so I got my first evaluation from them after being there for a year, and I looked at it, and I wasn't even ranked. And my executive officer was debriefing me on it. And I looked at it, and I saw right away I wasn't ranked, and I put it down, and I said, "Hey, sir, can you tell me what I did that I didn't even get ranked amongst my peer group?" And I thought I was charging hard with them. And he started looking and was trying to call my department head, but he wasn't answering his phone. And then he came out and he said, "Hey, you know, your department head said you were a clock watcher." And I said, "What's that, a clock watcher?" And he said, "Well, you come in at a certain time and you leave at a certain time." And I said, "You know, I just got off a sea tour. I'm with my wife and my daughter, and I thought I could help her out and take my daughter to daycare in the morning, and then I have to pick her up by a certain time." And I asked my supervisors if that was okay, and no one said anything. They said it was fine, but I didn't know that would be negatively reflected upon me. And I said, "The other thing I have a hard time with, sir, is now I got to go home and talk to my wife and tell her that I'm going to make chief this year because I didn't even make the top 50% to get ranked, and the CPO screening board's going to see that. So it's hard for me to go and tell my family that I failed them this year." Man, he went in there and talked to my CO. My CO came back out and said, "Hey, you don't have to talk to your wife about that." But that's just the kind of guy that I was. And then I further had a conversation with my executive officer. He said, "You know what?" He called me LN1, Legalman First Class LN1. He said, "You know what, LN1? My pick, my number one sailor is LN1 Wamsley. He's over there. He's here before I get here, and he's here after I leave, but he's overweight. And since he's overweight, I can't put him as my number one sailor, but he's my number one sailor." But I heard what he said. He told me to get it there early and to stay late. And so, and then he further told me something else. He said, "You know what? You need to have conversations with your supervisors and your department heads and your division officers. And you need to poke your head in there and you need to say at least once a week, 'Hey, what am I doing good so I can continue doing it? And hey, what am I doing negatively so I can fix it?' And if you have that conversation, you'll know and you'll be on the right track, and it builds some trust." And I did that from then on out. So the next year I made Sailor of the Year, picked up chief after that, went to Sasebo, Japan and picked up chief there. And I was the only one in that area to pick up chief. So I went through a season solo. And those guys and the ships around them, they all had a good time with only a single CPO selectee. And it was during the time too, when it was the initiation time where they did some stuff, but I went through it. I didn't get hurt. You know, I can understand the Navy moved in a different direction, but I was from the old Navy and from the new Navy, and it taught me a lot. And that being a chief petty officer, once I understood that I'm a Navy chief petty officer, and I believe that, man, that helped me, and I had the authority to do my job, and I just started doing great things from there. And I left there and I went to Naples, Italy. And when I went to Naples, Italy, I met this lawyer that was working there for the region, and she worked for the admiral. And she re-enlisted me when I was an E5 back when I was at that Navy Legal Service office. And her name was Commander Hamilton. And she said, "Hey, sit here with the Master Chief and talk to him, and I'll be back." And it was the area Master Chief that was in charge of it wasn't the Sixth Fleet guy, but the region. And so he worked for the 2-star admiral that was there. And I sat with him, and he said, "Hey, how does it feel to be in Naples? I'm glad that you're here. I think that you needed to go to sea and you didn't. You came overseas. So I don't think you're going to make senior chief, chief. I think you should go ahead and relax and enjoy this tour. I think you should go out with your family and enjoy Napoli. Go out there and see and have a good time. Enjoy your quality of life because you passed up going to sea. What I didn't tell him was they didn't have any orders for me to go overseas. I was looking to see where I could go. And the Navy going to Naples allowed me the possibility to go over there and work with the other chiefs and break out with my peer group. And so the command mast chief there was great for me. The Naples CPO mess that we had, we combined with the area and we made that place run and had such a great time and doing great things. I ended up making senior chief. I was the only one there with the band guy that made senior chief in my time there. And after I made senior chief, I was able to apply for the Senior Enlisted Academy. Back then, you had to send a package to go to the Senior Enlisted Academy, and they would look at it and say yay or nay. And if you passed it, then you really got into the Command Mast Chief program. Back then was the way to do it. And so I put in a package, I got selected, and I was up for orders, and I chose to go to the Trial Service Office East. That was the biggest, the Navy Legal Service Office had split. Navy Legal Service Office is still there, but they're for the defense side and for the legal assistance issues for the sailor. The Trial Service Office is court martials, command services, court reporting. And I went there because those captains, when they finish their tours there, if they did good, they become the Judge Advocate Generals of the Navy. And it was a hard charging place. And I thought, well, I'll go over there. I'm going to be the senior enlisted leader. And so I went to do that. Then they sent me to the Senior Enlisted Academy. I became a command senior chief. And it was during the time the Judge Advocate General of the Navy felt that he wanted to produce a lot of individual augmentee assignments. And those assignments were for folks to go to Iraq. And it was during the time, I don't know if you remember those nasty pictures that came out from Abu Ghraib with the detainees. And so the mission that they were going to send me for, they fired all the Army guys and they started sending all these Navy, Marine, Air Force, and Army. And I was a senior enlisted guy that was sent there to go work for them for 14 months. And so I went solo and went to the Army unit to get my augmentee, get all my gear, to get my weapons training. And then they flew me into Iraq and I worked for this 2-star general and Army general. And I had all these detainee folks. It was Task Force 134 detainee ops for multinational force Iraq. And the 4-star there at the time was General Casey. And then he was relieved by General Treyas. And so I worked for the 2-star that was the deputy commander to them. And we had all the confinement facilities. We had the Central Criminal Court of Iraq, and we had this other body that would go through and they would look at the detainees and they would either release them in 90 days or they would keep them for additional 90 days. And we were split throughout the whole Iraq. And the month after I got there, I made Master Chief and then Command Master Chief at the same time. So that was kind of pretty good, boots on ground. It gave me a little bit of power. But I met some terrible Army leaders that I could not believe. And when I did, I flashed back and I thought, man, if I could just meet the chief that was in charge of this person when they were an ensign, and I would probably slap them because they produced the worst leader that was killing everybody's morale out there. I mean, they were just, it was a woman. She was a commander. She was a colonel, Air Force colonel. And she believed that she was the one making the decisions and no one else could make any decisions independently. But we had all these independent offices. And so everybody was so scared of her because she would reprimand you on the spot. The bad thing was that she would give you a bad set of evaluations and not a good award for giving your time in the war zone if you didn't play ball with her. And so I thought, well, I'm going to outlast her and I'm not scared of her. So I would go through all of our offices and I said, hey, in the Navy, we have divisions and you're the officer in charge here. You're the senior guy here. You guys make the decisions of where you want to do and go out there and do it. Don't call the flagpole and ask them for permission because they're going to tell you no. And if you go out there and do it and you see that they got whiff of it and didn't like it, then tell them that Command Master Chief Marco Ramirez told you it was okay. But give me the courtesy and let me know so I can understand where the incoming will be coming from. And we charged that way, and I outlasted her, but it was a tiring tour for me, but I learned so much from that. And I came back and I got my first real Command Master Chief tour with the aircraft squadron. And it was a Navy aircraft F-18 squadron. They pulled us off the aircraft carrier and they gave us some older jets that had expired their time from launching from the catapults and the arresting gear. After a certain many launches and arrestments, they can't use it anymore. And they thought, well, can we save this airframe? Let's put you in a Marine mission and you would have the landings on the land and we could preserve the life of this airframe. So that's kind of what they did. So I was in Lemoore, California at the new master jet base there. I was in expeditionary force. And so we would go and deploy from Lemoore. We would fly into Iwakuni, Japan. It was a Marine base. And we would meet up with two other Marine squadrons, one from the East Coast, one from the West Coast, meet up in Iwakuni. And then Iwakuni had the Marine squadron there with the colonel. And so we were a squadron fighting for the Marine Corps. What an interesting assignment. It was a blast. You know, I was able to go out on deployment and you'd go back and go to sleep in your barracks that night, you know, but they called us up and they selected our squadron to go out to the Philippines. And it was after Clark had been abandoned, and I landed there in Clark Air Force Base, and I saw nothing but FedEx and UPS airplanes and our F-18s that were there and some other support aircraft. And I also saw this little white building where this young Air Force or this older Air Force gentleman was, and that was the terminal of going back to the Philippines and catching MAC flights, and he handled that right there in this little white building. But I remember taking a jog through there, and I saw the jungle overtaking this building, and as I got closer, it was a commissary there that was on Clark Air Force Base. Really just blew my mind. And our jets were able to the mission that they were there for, there were these mountains in the Philippines that the jihadi terrorists were up on top, and they were fortified, and the ground forces were trying to get them, but they kept getting eaten up. So they asked us to go over there and blow them up for 30 days. And we did it in 25 days and successfully completed that mission. But I had 4 CSs, young guys, 2 E3, 1 E4, 1 E5, and there were 4. And so when we went there, it was almost like a jungle operation. I mean, there was nothing there. So we had to feed ourselves. We had to go find our food, cook it, and deliver it. And so I had all 4 of them. I gave them $550 from the CPO mess and told them to go buy some food. And I asked them, split up in shifts. And I went breakfast, lunch, dinner, and mid-rats. And port, starboard, and please, nobody gets sick. And they were able to execute it. After I gave them that money, they were able to make more money from what the sailors were giving them for their food. And we left very successful. And I asked my commanding officer if we could give them Navy Achievement Medals at their young age, because had they done something wrong, all of us would have been sick and we wouldn't have been able to complete our mission, but they didn't. And they did that out there in the elements, and that we didn't even practice for. And so that was a great mission. And when I left there, I was accepted as a command master chief for the Navy Forces Central Command. I got to work for a 3-star admiral. And my boss said to me out the door, he said, Admiral Courtney had asked, why do I select him, Captain? And my boss said, because you'd be an idiot not to. And so when I met Admiral Courtney, he told me, I'm not an idiot, Master Chief. So let's go out and do some good things. And he was a great leader. And I was able to work, and I brought all the CPO messes from all the different commands together and made this area mess in Bahrain. And we just were able to take care of our younger officers, our younger sailors, because over there, they had no drink. If you drank and you were driving and you had a percentage of alcohol that was above 0.0, that was a DUI, and they would get rid of, yes. And so we had a lot of young sailors there that were in the security departments and stuff. And so we were always trying to take care of them. And our chief's mess was able to get them all rides. And I remember walking into this meeting that they were having, and they didn't want to pay for officers. And it was like, we don't only look down at our sailors, we look up at our leaders as well, and we shape those folks. And I went back and forth. It was about a 30-minute debate amongst all my, and some of them were some serious chiefs, man. I mean, they were some hardcore, and I think I was able to sway them, and we were able to go ahead and pay for everybody. But we did good things in Bahrain. It was during the time I was there when they did the Captain Phillips. I don't know if you remember Captain Phillips situation, but that happened under our watch. It was very interesting to see, and the sailors all that we worked for, they just did some really great things. And then from there, I was able to go off and be the 6th Fleet Command man. Well, let me back up. When I was in Bahrain, Mick Pond West came out to visit, and I had put in a package to be the 6th Fleet Command Master Chief. And Rick West, he pulled me aside. He says, "Hey, I like the things you're doing here in Bahrain. I want you to stay." I didn't have the courage to say, "Hey, Mick Pond, I put a package," because I didn't know I was going to be picked or not. And so he ended up leaving, and I got selected, and I went to Napoli to go work for the 3-star and the 6th Fleet. And once I got there, my phone rang, and it was Mick Pond West. And he said, "Marco, I'm glad that you're there. I just want to tell you that I've been to Naples, and I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with how they carry on. I'm not happy with how trashy it is. And you're the man there that's going to change it. And if you can't, I'm going to find somebody who can." And then he hung the phone up. That was my welcome to Naples, I'll tell you. And so I took that to heart. He scared me. And I remember the last time I was there, and I noticed it. It was the chief's mess were disconnected. There was nobody together. And I'm not saying anything bad about anybody. I hope I don't get any rub. This is just coming from me and my personal observations. But I brought the chief's mess together. I used the 6th Fleet chief's mess, and we brought everybody together. I had Rich Hatton there too. He was the regent, and I had worked with him prior when we were at Naples prior, and our families were close together. And he was a solid leader, and he helped me, and we put things together. And man, we had Naples just riding and doing some really great things. Mick Pond West came back, and he was happy with it, and I felt good. And then from Naples, I went off, and I think we did some good things over there in Naples. From Naples, I went off, and I got selected for the Fleet Master Chief and went to the Pacific. So I stayed there, and then that's what I remember getting off the airplane, because I had to leave my family in Naples because my kids were still in school, and my wife wanted to wait for them to finish and then come join me. And Admiral Haney had said, hey, he needed me out there quick because John Minyard, the other Fleet Master Chief, was moving on. And I came out and I accommodated them, and I came by myself. And when I got off the airplane, Enrique was there waiting for me, and said he met me there with his family. And I thought, that what a humbling experience for me. And I recognized it, and I never forgot it. And I knew what kind of person he was. And then afterwards, I don't know if you remember Mark Sabal, Enrique. Mark Sabal was this guy, and he was a Region Command Master Chief. But when I was getting there, he was getting ready to leave after a couple of months. And I quickly noticed that Mark Sabal was like the godfather. I mean, he said something, people did it. That was the end of the story. And I really enjoyed that, and knew that it was a requirement over there that you needed that solid leader. And so when he was leaving, the person relieving him didn't live up to that expectation, and I could see very clearly. And so Enrique stepped up as the senior chief, and he kind of ran that whole area. And I tried to give him all the support that I could, but everything that I really wanted to do, he did it. And he was able to do it. And so that made my tour very easy on that side. But what I really enjoyed about that tour is because I had a different CPO mess there. I mean, I had there at Pack Fleet, but I also had, really, my day would consist of talking to, I had operational fleet master chiefs, the 3rd Fleet and the 6th Fleet. And then I had force master chiefs of the submarines, the surface forces, the air forces, expeditionary forces, and had special operations, and then had all the region command master chiefs that were in charge of everywhere, including Singapore and Korea and the region of Japan, and all through San Diego and the Northwest. And so I would spend my time really communicating with those guys and gals on a daily basis. And that was a great assignment for me that I really enjoyed doing and advocating for the sailors. So I had a really good time, and I had a really good ride in the Navy. But I was fortunate, and it was others that were able to lift me and teach me, and I never looked back.
I was going through your history, catapult.
Oh yeah.
I did not know you did catapult, but guess what? I was the project manager, program manager of the catapult school at Lakehurst.
Oh my God, isn't that something?
Yeah, and then I was going through advocating for sailors, right? So we're going to get into this leadership piece right now as I'm asking you this question. But advocating for sailors, you mentioned the bad leadership that you ran across and you was able to witness, and you've learned so much, you've been able to experience so much. So what pivotal leadership moments did you learn from the most in that whole evolution of your time in the Navy?
Well, the biggest one, the first one was that conversation I had with my executive officer. His name was Bruce McDonald. That guy was such a phenomenal leader. He wanted to do things the right way all the time. And he was proper and prim and a great speaker. And he ended up being the Judge Advocate General of the Navy. This guy was inspiring to where he was able to take his career that way. And he was able to share with me when I was a young E6 and tell me the key to working with people. And part of that is, hey, what am I doing that you like? So I could keep doing it. And what are you doing that I don't like? So I could stop doing it. And that taught me from that moment on, when I'm a leader, to how to make the best division. And the best divisions are made by clear communication. And that's with your first class, your E6, your chief, and your division officer. And if you get those three people to meet before quarters and talk about what you three have for that day, what you need to do, what you want to do, what appointments are going on or whatever, then you have the first class and chief deliver the information at quarters to the division. And once I think the division sees the first class and the chief on the same page, they don't play them against each other. And that really helps them. And after about 2 weeks and at the end of the day, you have another meeting with your division officer, your chief, and your first class, and all three of you get together and you talk about what you did or what you wanted to do and you couldn't do it because of something else. And that builds trust amongst them. And you take it a step further and go to the bowling alley and you have some lunch or something, or go out and have a beer and just say, hey, what am I doing that you like so I can keep doing it? What am I doing that you don't like so I can stop and correct it? And it's like, sir, when you do that, you take my authority away, or, A, B, C, or D. But that conversation builds trust within that division, and that division starts producing results. And once it starts, that's a results division, and everybody else notices it, and you just keep going from there. You build good communication like that, and have good divisions, you're rocking and rolling. I mean, it's like two ships that are parked right next to each other. They could both be destroyers, and you see a group of sailors getting off one of them, and they're happy, and you see a group of sailors getting off the other ones, and their heads are down. There's a difference. Yeah, so I mean, I took that, and when I took that everywhere I went, and every command made me successful that way.
Well, successful indeed. 32 years. Great story, great evolution indeed. Fleet Master Chief Marco. Let me ask you this question.
Yes.
Talked about the ranks from the future and the ranks from the past. Who was instrumental, other than who you mentioned, that impact you while you served in the military?
Oh, I wrote some names down so I didn't forget them. Sometimes I need to put on my glasses, and I'm at that age to where I need to wear my glasses to read up close or go to the restaurant, but I don't do it. I need to finally accept it and go do those things. But I remember when I was on the CBN 70, the Carl Vincent, there was a LN1 Cotton, my LPO. This guy was from Louisiana, never made chief, but he was a strong instrumental leader that had techniques I was able to just absorb like a sponge and keep going. And my supervisor said, I don't really remember their names when I was on the Enterprise, when I was telling you I found that hydraulic leak. Some of the ways that they would help me was, I remember them giving me this counseling, negative counseling, because I was supposed to lubricate this one area of this equipment, and I would put to lubricate it, but it wasn't taking the grease fittings. But I wasn't smart enough to go tell them that it wasn't taking it. I thought that's just the way it was, and they found that it wasn't taking it, and why I didn't bring it up. So they gave me this counseling. It was negative. I had my head down, and I felt bad. And 2 months after they gave me that counseling, they gave me another counseling, same guy. And he gave me this counseling, good counseling, and said I was doing good things. And I learned a lot from that experience of supervision. You could hit your folks with something negative, but then follow it up with something positive. And it makes a difference, because it made a difference for me. And so I had that. That was instrumental. And, I just always learned from, I talked about Mark Sabal. There's all these other chiefs, Rich Hatton, great leader. Toby was up and coming. I had so many of these young guys that are now doing good things in the Navy, that you could only shape, and they shaped you as well. There's a lot of different. Steve, this guy was named Master Chief Stephen DeStefano. He was in charge of all the legalmen, and he would work for the Judge Advocate General of the Navy and he was like the Force Master Chief of the legalmen. But he wasn't a command Master Chief, but he was a solid leader. He was able to, I worked with him to look at the legalman rating, and he wanted to make them more professional. And so he teamed up with Roger Williams University and a school there in Rhode Island, and had them come in and teach a curriculum for 3 different classes in their A school. And once they finished, they were able to enroll online with Roger Williams and get their 2-year or 4-year paralegal certificate. And he made that a requirement in the legalman rating for them to do that. That was very exciting. And that was the type of guy that he was. And he was hard charging. And I learned so much from him. As a matter of fact, I was very conflicted about leaving the legalman rating and going into the command master chief field, because he was so instrumental. And I thought I would hurt him by doing that and leaving him, but he let me go. So he was really good. And when I went to Naples, Italy as a command master chief, it was the senior chief, Nate Stevens, and command master chief, Willie Klaus. Both of those guys were instrumental, and I just wanted to be just like them. They helped me go to the Senior Enlisted Academy and get accepted. And Nate Stevens has always been, he was a senior to me and a mentor, and he never made master chief. But I always looked at him for advice. And Willie Klaus went off and worked for the Navy over there at the Pentagon, and he punched out after that. He was just a solid gentleman, and I learned about good, solid leadership from that guy. And then I was fortunate when I left Naples, and when I went to work at Navy Forces Central Command. I mean, Admiral Gortney was a great leader. Admiral Fox was a great leader. Chuck Clark, he was the overall master chief in charge of that whole area. He was Jeff Covington, Command Master Chief Jeff Covington. Both of those guys were solid. They were solid influencers for me to do better. And then going off, and when I left there and went off to go to when I was at the 6th Fleet, I even had these younger senior chiefs that I really learned from. This one guy was named Ed Walker. He was a Navy cryptologist that did stuff with he did some really good stuff getting from China. And we had always that guy was always hard charging. But I just learned to do what I learned from him was he had attention deficit disorder as a child all the way up through as an adult. And I thought, oh, okay, that's the irk that I have with you. I understand that now. But he was a good guy. And when I went to the 6th Fleet and I went to go relieve Jay Wood was a 6th Fleet Command Master Chief, but he was very operational. And he believed that he needed to go work the operations of the European and African theater. And the 6th Fleet and their command there, they could pick up, and they don't need him to succeed. And I looked at it a little bit different. And so I thought that, no, that's where we build our base. You need to build your base so they can do their job, and then we get ready to go and let's go do it. And so Ed Walker helped me there and produced some really good CPO seasons that we had. Joanne Ortloff was the fleet master chief when I was there as well. And she was a hard charging person, but it was hers, and she let you know that real fast. And she was a good leader, and I learned a lot from her as well. And then, when I got to go to Pac Fleet, they were just surrounded with so many different great leaders. I mentioned Mark Sabal, John Minyard was there that I relieved, and my wife has been the rock of that made me successful, because she allowed me the opportunity to concentrate and do my job and not worry about my family. And we've raised 3 beautiful kids. I got my firstborn. She lives in Florida. When I go see her, she gave us 3 grandkids, and she's a speech pathologist, and her husband's an executive for an oil company. They're doing really well. My middle daughter, Madison, is attending a doctorate program for physical therapy. She's doing great. And then I got my son that's a sophomore in high school. Thank God he's going to start driving in March. Would give me extra time, and maybe I could do other things. But I raised him since he's been 3rd grade. When I retired, he's a good boy. He's doing good things. There's so many I can't even name, and I feel bad that I'm not able to.
I know them all, so don't
Okay.
worry. They're accounted for.
Oh, that's
But
good.
I tell you that that whole opportunity to be an influencer, an instrumental, and a person, and have impact is so important in leadership. And I hope those that are listening can strive to do that, because we always do remember those great leaders, right? Now, you had 32 years of naval service, a long trajectory, many milestones, and you saw a Navy, that was wearing blue camouflage before we left, right?
Yeah.
And
Big part of
2015,
Campo.
yeah, and
Yeah.
things have changed undoubtedly. But what are your thoughts regarding the future of the Navy?
Well, I wrote something down when you asked me that question. I'm gonna put on my glasses now so I could make sure that I see it. Talking about some other guys. Now I'm looking at some of the names I wrote down. Russ Smith and Jim Honea. They were young when I worked there. But the Navy's been around for generations. Generations, and generations change. People change. They the agenda folks that we have, the millennials that are out there. And to succeed as senior leaders, I think that you need to learn the younger generation and what motivates them and how they operate. You can't just say jump and how high, because they don't understand that. They understand a different form of leadership. Once you understand that, they could respond, and you can motivate them so they could continue to produce the leaders that are going to be successful. When I left the Navy, I wasn't worried, because I knew we had top-notch people out there that we produced our replacements. But it worries me sometimes when you can't motivate the younger folks to take up their arms. I mean, I think of Ukraine and see what they're doing out there against the big old Russian force. And my private hope is to be able to go over there and plant a NATO flag over there and go take some liberty in Russia in the future. We'll see. But I think chiefs need the authority to do their job. And sometimes I don't think that they're given that. And I think sometimes they don't ask for that either. So it's a double-edged sword. So I think that that the jobs, it's dependent on the division officers and the department heads and the XOs and COs and even admirals to give the chiefs the authority to do their job. Some of them don't, because I think that maybe they came as a young ensign and didn't have a good job as a division officer and didn't have a good relationship with their young chief. And sometimes that happens, and that's tragic. And so I think to preserve that relationship makes a big difference. But you need to trust your replacements, and once you do that, they're just you build folks. I had this when I was there at the Navy Legal Service Office as the TSO. When I worked there, senior enlisted leader, we had about 40 folks that we would get that were limited duty, that would come from the ships, that were either pregnant they were doing bunion surgery, or they were hurt one way that they couldn't go back to sea duty. So I would ask for the manpower, come on over here. And there was this young E4 that made E5 there. And this guy always did anything you asked, he did it, and he did it better, you know? And he was always counted. You could always count on him. And during that time, we started our war in terrorism, against terrorism after 9/11. The corpsman rating came out and they were asking for folks. And he said, hey, Senior Chief, can I put in for this program? I said, absolutely. I'll do whatever it takes because you deserve to go. And so he put in for it, and his department head denied it. Says, I need the body. I said, no, sir, we don't work that way. You got to give this guy, he did not even, a legal man, he's not even part of our command. We're using him as body, and look at, he's delivering for us. Let's reward him. And nope, he wanted the body. So I said, well, no, let's go talk to the captain. So department head, senior enlist leader, go off to go talk to the captain. Captain sat there and was kind of hilarious for him to see both of us debating in front of him about this limited duty sailor. At the end of the day, the captain signed off and let him go, and he went. And I don't remember his name, but I remember him. And about 5 years later, I'm on Liberty here by Fort Sam in San Antonio in civilian clothes, and I'm putting gas in my car. And I hear, Senior Chief, Senior Chief. And I heard it, but I wasn't responding because I was a master chief for a long time. I heard, and he ran right up to me. He ran right up to me and he said, hey, I want to thank you. And I knew him, but I didn't know from where. And he said, I want to thank you. I'm working as a corpsman. I'm a first class, and I'm working with the Marine Corps. I just got back from my 3rd tour in Afghanistan. Do you know how many lives I've saved? You know, that sums it up there. Because if you make good people, and you need to go out and let them go, and they're going to do better things, but you hold on to them and you suffocate them, you know, you just need to let good people go. That's what I hope for the future of the Navy.
Great story. It's so true, validating what you said. We should have let Enrique go, right? Because he would have done even better things, as you mentioned. Well, you know, it's been awesome 247 years. Looking forward to hearing what is the one leadership tip or advice you would like to give your upcoming sailors, and how do our listeners get a hold of you?
Okay, well, the theme I think is the communication. I call it the little pain of maintenance of the relationship, and it works for husband and wives, brothers and sisters, friends, divisions. Is asking them what you're doing good, so you can keep doing it good, and what you're doing poorly, so you could correct the deficiency. If you can't correct the deficiency, you're going to keep doing it, and you're going to keep doing it. And when I have people that work for me and I can't talk to them about, like I had this one sailor when I was the first command master chief, and this guy, I could tell that he always needed to shave. And I would see him, and as I was making a beeline to go over there and tell him, something would happen. My phone would ring, or I get deviated and I couldn't catch him. But I remembered him, and it started festering inside me. And the second time it happened, something else happened. And then I thought, okay. And then the third time, I didn't answer my phone. I walked straight for him, and I kind of abandoned my rank because I put my hand on his chest and put him against the wall. And I said, every time I see you, you need to shave. I don't understand. I said, you know what? Let's go. I took him to the bathroom. I got a razor out. I turned on the water, and I'm sitting there behind him, and I saw him look in the mirror, look at me through the mirror, look at the water, look at the razor, look at the mirror. And he did that for a little bit. And I was thinking, what the heck is going on here? I started getting kind of upset, and I was getting ready to say something. And he said, can you show me? The aha moment. Can you show me? You know, sometimes you need to come with a hug instead of a spear. So I learned from him, and I took him into my wing, and he's successful, I'm sure, today. But we had that with conversation and communication and engagement.
You know, that's so powerful because when you think about the opportunities you have as a leader and how many times you headed out with spear because you do, you know,
Sure.
there's a thing, you know, I don't bear the sword without reason, but that sword is like last element, right?
Yeah,
Last
you're right.
resort.
That's right.
Great story there. And I know you have tons of wisdom because I
Oh,
sat under it, right? So how can somebody contact you and tap into some of that? And what's
oh
the
yeah,
best way
man.
to reach?
I get calls to this day from other folks that are out in the field. It always makes me feel good. And I tell them that they could vent to me if they need to, because sometimes you can't vent and you need that opportunity to vent. And I learned that lesson from being the Sixth Fleet Command Master Chief. And I would have the operational forces come in through and they would take their deployments. And I sent a letter to the command master chief of the ship when they entered our theater, and I told them, hey, here's the region, points of contact, here's this is how we charge. Hey, here's my personal phone number. Call me if you need to vent. I'm always going to help you out however I can. I have an old Gmail email account that I still use to this day because my NMCI one time failed and the admiral was looking for me. I had to establish it, and it was CMC marco.ramirez@gmail.com.
Yeah, that yeah, and we'll share some of that information there with the with the public, folks. We've been speaking with Fleet Master Marco Ramirez. I know him personally. I'm one of those that do have his cell number and
Yeah, give
use
me a
it.
call, man.
But I tell you that it's been such a pleasure, and we'll make sure to share that with the audience so that they can get some of Marco Ramirez and his wisdom. But if you want to contact us at the Leadership Void, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is the email you'll send that correspondence. If you want a leadership topic covered or you want to see a guest on our show, that's how you'll do it. But today we're celebrating the Navy birthday with Fleet Master Chief Marco Ramirez. We wish every sailor a happy birthday and wish great, great times as you execute your missions out there abroad and answer the mail for our nation. God bless you all. Happy birthday.
Oh, yeah.